This is the Sony ZV-E1, the new flagship camera in the ZV line. Now, it kind of looks like the A7C, but it has some of the low-light features from the A7S III, has some of the cinematic features from the FX3, and even has some of the AI features from the A7R5. I know, this camera is wild. Let's check it out. And you'll see this white box around me, and you see how that it's slowly zooming in on my face. Go back a little bit and walk around, and now the camera will just keep you in the center. Like, this is such a good solution. I mean, look at this. And moods can range from auto, gold, forest, and ocean. Right, so there is a lot to talk about the new Sony ZV-E1. So many features jam-packed into this camera, and we're gonna talk about everything, all the photography specs, the video specs, the AI features, stabilization, all of that. And if you wanna fast forward to those things, then you can use the chapters down below. But first, let's give you a physical tour of the Sony ZV-E1. Right, so here is the camera in all its glory, and I love the form factor of the ZV-E1. It's small, it's compact, it's very lightweight, and to be honest, it doesn't really feel like a ZV camera. I mean, no offense to like the ZV-E10, ZV-1, ZV-1F, like they kind of feel cheap, where the ZV-E1 doesn't really. In fact, it kind of feels very similar to the Sony A7C, and so if you have that camera, then you have an idea of what the ZV-E1 will feel like. In fact, it kind of feels a little more robust than the A7C. But the build quality is great. It's water and dust resistant. You can see that nice full frame sensor right over there, although I probably shouldn't do that. I'll cover it up later. It looks prettier without the cap, you know? On top of the camera, you have your on-off switch to turn on the camera, turn it off. You have your trigger button to take photos. You also have your zoom rocker to zoom in, zoom out. You get a nice big record button to record video. Next to that, you have the background defocus button, which is a really cool feature from the Sony ZV line, where the camera lowers down the aperture of the camera depending on what lens you're using. But it's a great little feature to like quickly defocus the background and make your subjects pop, hence the name background defocus. And so if you want to use that little feature, just press this button over there. You can also customize that button to whatever function you want, but by default, the background defocus button is right over there. Below that, you have your mode switch to go from photography mode, movie mode, into SNQ mode. Next to that, you have your new Intelligent 3 capsule mic. It's a really cool mic. We'll talk about that later. Next to that, you have your hot shoe so that you can attach accessories on it, like the Sony ECM B10 mic. And then on the back are the familiar buttons that you would find on Sony cameras. You got a dial button on the back, which you can assign, again, whatever function you want. I've assigned it to change the aperture. And next to it, you have your menu button so that you can go to the menu screen. You have another custom button that you can assign whatever function you want. You have a function menu button to quickly access your favorite features in the function menu screen. You got the usual directional pad, as well as the play button and the trash button, which you can use for product showcase. Again, another cool feature of the Sony ZV line, where it focuses on the product even if your eyes are in the frame. Really cool feature if you are reviewing and showcasing a product. Product showcase. The camera does have a fully articulating flip out screen, great for vlogging, very cool. Oh, and the screen has touch capabilities for tracking as well as navigating through the menu. And if you want to see what the menu looks like, it's very similar to the A7S III, but also it features that tile menu system in the FX3 and FX30. And then to the side of the camera are all the ports. Let's go ahead and open it. I just cut my fingernails, and so it's hard for me to open the doors. Ow. All right, cool. On top, you have a mic jack to connect your microphone to the camera. You also have a USB-C port to charge the camera or even connect it to your computer if you want to use the camera to live stream. Below that, you have a single SD card slot. And below that, you have a headphone jack and a micro HDMI port. And I know it's not a full HDMI port, but you have to keep in mind that this is a budget camera, a budget full frame camera. And so you're not going to get everything from the A7S III or FX3. Whoa, whoa, oh my gosh, I touched the sensor. Oh. And if you're wondering what kind of battery the ZV-E1 takes, well, they take the Sony Z batteries, which are the batteries that you use with the A7S III, FX3, and A7R5. So there you go. Okay, I should probably put the cap on because I just touched the sensor. Sorry, Sony. Oh, and a fun fact, some parts of the Sony ZV-E1 are made from recyclable materials, like the windscreen is made from recycled polyester, and even the packaging is made from recycled material. It's not entirely made of recycled parts, but it's a cool step forward towards sustainability. Oh, it just doesn't look as cool with the cap on. All right, I'll take it off. Just don't touch the sensor anymore. Now, when it comes to photography, there's actually not much to say. I mean, it shoots 12 megapixel photos, similar to the A7S III. There's no viewfinder, which is the nice thing about photography cameras, but you can still take great photos, JPEGs, RAWs. You can create time lapses within the camera, although that's a bit misleading because you can already create time lapses using S&Q with other Sony cameras. Still, it's a pretty cool feature that you can create time lapses within the camera instead of having to do that in post. Now, for the video specs of the ZV-E1, this is where it gets really interesting. First of all, it can shoot 4K video up to 120 frames per second, although you have to wait for an upcoming firmware update coming later this summer for that to happen. So if you pre-order and get the camera within April or May, you can only film 4K video up to 60 frames per second. So just wait for that firmware update so that you can film 4K 120. Now, what makes the Sony ZV-E1 really interesting is that it's very similar to the Sony A7S III and FX III in terms of low light capability. I mean, I don't exactly know for sure if it's the same exact sensor as those cameras, but it is. So that means you can use the Sony ZV-E1 to shoot low light situations just as you would with the Sony A7S III and the FX III without having to pay the price of an A7S III or an FX III. I just bought an FX III, man. But with that said, you can shoot 4K 10-bit 422 video internally. Just like the FX III, you can change your log settings to shoot flexible ISO. And you can install your own LUTs within the camera and preview what your shot looks like with those LUTs installed. And if you want to create styles within the camera, a new feature called Cinematic Vlog Settings will help you do that, where you can mix around different looks and moods. Looks can vary from S-Cinetone, clean, chic, fresh, and mono, and moods can range from auto, gold, forest, and ocean. It's cool, but those letterbox bars will be added to your footage, so keep that in mind. But what's cool is that you can turn on your cinematic vlog settings quickly if you add it to the function menu. Now, the stabilization of the ZV-E1 is insane. I mean, of course you have active mode stabilization that's featured on recent Sony cameras, but now there's this new feature called dynamic active mode stabilization, where the camera crops in on your shot just a little bit more to give you a 30% more effective stabilization than active mode stabilization. All right, first up, no stabilization at all. Here we go. Okay. All right, standard stabilization. Here we go. All right, active mode stabilization. And now dynamic active mode stabilization. That looked really smooth. All right, stabilization test. It's cold and my hands are shaking. No stabilization right now. All right, standard stabilization applied. It looks pretty steady. Hands are shaking. All right, active stabilization activated. Cropped in on the shot just a bit more. All right, let's turn on dynamic active mode stabilization. There we go. We got a major crop with dynamic active mode stabilization, but I'm cold and my hands are shaking and it's not moving. It is not moving. So there you go. All right, so now I'm going to show you my absolute favorite feature of the Sony ZV-E1, and that's auto framing. And basically what that is that the camera will track and slowly zoom in on your face automatically. There's no one behind the camera, no one is controlling the camera whatsoever. The zooming is happening in the camera in real time. In fact, I've attached the Atomos Ninja 5 Plus to the ZV-E1 just to record all the camera settings so you can see what's happening. And you'll see this white box around me, and you see how that it's slowly zooming in on my face. Well, in the actual camera, you'll see the final result. You'll see that slow zoom in shot, which is so cool that the camera is doing it by itself. It's nuts. Oh, and speaking of AI, another really cool feature is called framing stabilizer, where basically the camera just keeps you in the center and tracks you no matter where you go. It's crazy. You can do that handheld, you can do that on a tripod, super easy. All you have to do is just tap on yourself or the subject, go back a little bit and walk around, and now the camera will just keep you in the center. How cool is that? That's nuts. Like, I'm looking at it right now, like there's no person behind the camera. Like, it's handling it on its own. It's so crazy. It's mind-blowing. Like, I know there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be like, oh, I'm not going to need that feature, but I know there's going to be a ton of people that are going to find this feature incredibly useful, especially if you can't afford to hire a videographer to film your YouTube videos. Like, this is such a good solution. I mean, look at this. It's just tracking me. All right, we're gonna do an ISO test because I wanna see if the ZV-E1 has dual base ISO, just like the A7S III and FX3. We're shooting in S-Log3, starting at ISO 160, ISO 200, 250, 320, 400, 500, 640, oh, there it is, ISO 800, 1000, 1250, 1600, 2000, 2500, 3200, 4000, 5000, 6400, 8000, 10,000, 12,800. Oh, there it is. It is dual base ISO. All right, let's move on. ISO 16,000, 20,000, 20,000, 25,600, 32,000, 40,000, 51,200, 64,000, 80,000, 102,400, 128,000, 60,000, 160,000, 204,800, 256,000, 256,000, 320,000, and 409,600. Totally usable. Now, as I've mentioned, the ZV-E1 has adopted some AI features from the A7R5, such as face memory recognition, where the camera can literally remember your face and keep it in focus while filming. Well, now the ZV-E1 can recognize multiple people in the same scene and adjust your aperture if they're not on the same focal plane. It's pretty cool, but it was one of those tests that I didn't have time to film, so sorry. Oh, and also the overheating test, didn't have time to film that either. It never overheated while I used it, so there's that. Sorry. All right, let's talk about the new Intelligent 3 capsule mic. Right now, you're hearing the audio from the onboard mic of the camera, and it's actually really cool because you can change the direction of where the audio source is coming from. Right now, I've set it to the front of the camera. This is what the audio sounds like if I'm vlogging with the camera by itself without any external microphones attached to the camera. And because I can change the direction of where the audio source is coming from, I'm gonna flip it so that you can hear my audio from behind the camera as if I'm like narrating and showing you something. All right, so this is the audio coming from behind the camera. And yes, my office is quite dirty, very messy. I just am lazy to even do anything about it. So there you go. And now switch the audio pickup pattern to be omnidirectional. So it's capturing audio from all sides of the camera. Here's what it sounds like coming from front of the camera. Here's what it sounds like from the side of the camera, from behind the camera, from the other side of the camera, and now back to the front of the camera. And finally, there is an auto setting where it automatically detects where the audio source is coming from. So obviously I'm speaking in front of the camera, so the audio should sound fairly clear. So the audio should be picking up. So the audio should be fairly clear as it's picking. So the audio should sound fairly clear as it's picking up the audio source from front of the camera. Now I'm gonna just flip it around. And now I'm speaking from behind the camera. Hopefully the microphone will do its job and capture audio from behind. All right, so I'm at this event and I'm talking from behind the camera. It's kind of loud and I don't know how this is going to sound, but I'm speaking because I'm narrating the scene and we will see, no, we will hear what it sounds like. You almost got me there. All right, now we have the front direction of the microphone turned on, so you can barely hear me. I'm speaking from behind the camera. This is what the audio sounds like. Now we'll do Omni. All right, so now we have omnidirectional mode turned on. You should hear audio from the front, the sides, and from the rear. It should sound like a mess, but there we go. Now, when it comes to connectivity, the ZV-E1 can easily connect to your phone with a new app called Sony's Creator Cloud. Basically, it's a better version than Imaging Edge, where you can connect your camera to your phone and upload your media to your phone so that you can edit it or put it to TikTok or Reels. We're not gonna get too much into the app right now, but it's a really cool app. I actually really like it. But it's a platform where I can actually see my uploaded media files on my computer instead of, Imaging Edge, because I don't know what it does. Now, as far as my personal user experience goes, I thought this camera was really cool. I mean, it really does remind me of the A7C, and it's so cool that it can shoot in low light situations like the A7S III and has some cinema features from the FX3 and AI features of the A7R5. You have like a little bit up here and there packed into this one camera, and I think it's a great option for first-time content creators looking for a camera probably better than the ZV-1 or ZV-1F, which is a camera that a lot of people hated. But also I think it's a great camera for people that already have full-frame cameras like the A7S III or FX3 and are looking for a similar camera as a backup, you know? Like this would actually be a pretty good studio camera or a top-down camera. Maybe. But if you're looking for a great full-frame camera that has a lot of cool AI features and really cool stabilization, then yeah, definitely check out the Sony ZV-E1.